Welcome back to another episode of Rob Sports. And as you can see by the title and by the thumbnail, today I'm going to be doing a recap on the Ruston versus Stephenville game, man. Right here we had another Louisiana versus Texas matchup. So I'm going to kind of just go through and I'm going to just look at some plays, whether it was crucial third down plays, crucial fourth down plays, red zone, explosive plays, turnovers, penalties, etc. And kind of just point out some things that I noticed. So right here, the first opening drive you had for Ruston, they find themselves on the 3rd and 2. And right here, you see that they lined up in a shotgun. And I'm not quite sure if they were kind of trying to run like a read option or if they were trying to run some type of pitch. But if you look, they end up pulling the left guard and the left tackle. And when they pulled the left guard and the left tackle, it just left some free runners to be able to get into the backfield. And then you see on the outside, too, they wasn't able to seal the outside edge, which allowed for the defender to have just a free release in the backfield. And then once you pull the left tackle and left guard, that left two more guys coming. So now you got 3 guys in the backfield, and they were able to tackle Sam Hartwell for a loss right here. And this was the very first possession, the opening possession of the game, which led to an eventual 3 and out. So right here, you got to have a situation for Stephenville. This was their opening drive. You got a 3rd and 6. So Ruston did a good job at winning first down and second down and kind of keeping them in the 3rd and medium and the 3rd and long. And you want to be able to do that as a defense. You want to try to keep them in 3rd and medium, 3rd and long territory and kind of put them in half the pass situations. That way, when you put them in half the pass situations, it kind of makes them a little one-dimensional because you know they're not going to run the ball. So you kind of can sell out to pass coverage, or if you want to bring some pressure in to try to make the quarterback get the ball out of his hands quicker, that's also something that you can do as well. So you look at Ruston, they're in the 2-high safety. It looks like they might have been playing split field coverage where they had man-to-man on one side and zone on the other side, but they had a 2-high safety look to take away from anything potentially downfield, to take away the options of giving up any explosive plays. So you end up getting a one-on-one matchup on the outside with the corner number 11. And obviously, by being a 3rd down, you know that anything that they pass for the most part is either going to be right at the sticks or it's probably going to be right past the sticks. So from a cornerback standpoint, if you know that, you understand that's the importance of understanding down and distance, because when you know that, okay, they have to get those 6 yards in order for them to get a first down, it kind of gives you an idea of exactly what they can be running. For the most part, they probably ain't going to run no post. They're probably not going to run no curl. They're probably not going to run something that's going to take a lot of time to develop. It's probably going to be something much more quick shot, especially in the shotgun. You're looking at them in the shotgun, they kind of just do like a little 2-step shot. In the corner play, this is as good as you can play it. He looks like he's about 5 yards off of him. The receiver comes off the ball. He does a good job at, kind of just staying patient for as long as he could. He didn't open up immediately. He stayed square as long as he could. And then as soon as the receiver was able to close the distance between him and the corner, he just got his hands on him at the top of the route and kind of just, read his hips. And when he sunk down trying to come back to the ball, he did a good job at breaking on it. And that was just good defense. So the quarterback tried to put it on his outside shoulder, but kind of overshot him a little bit. But nevertheless, that was good defense on the cornerback's part, which led to their first 3 and out as well. So the very next drive for Ruston, they come out in the I formation. Stephenville, they have a 2-high safety look. So it looks like from what I've seen a lot of in this game, they played from a 2-high safety shell, just pretty much saying that we're going to take away from anything attacking down the field. We're not going to give up any explosive plays. If anything, if we're going to give up some explosive plays, it's going to be on the ground. But right here, they do a good job at collapsing the interior of the pocket. So if you look, you got Stephenville has a 7-man box, meaning they have 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers. And then obviously for the offense, you're going to always have 5 offensive linemen on the ball. And then you have a tight end, so that gives you 6, and then you got the fullback directly behind the quarterback, so that gives you 7. So from an offensive standpoint, that's where you want to live. You want numbers to be equated. You want a hat for a hat, and that just leaves it up to the running back to be able to make the right read to try to gain some yards on that play. But like I say, Stephenville does a good job at just collapsing the interior of the pocket, just leaving him with nowhere to go. And I'm not quite sure because I couldn't really see from this angle whether they just stripped the ball out or whether it kind of was just a mishandle from the snap. Nevertheless, because that's kind of uncharacteristic from him. So far he hasn't put any balls on the ground, and obviously, a key statistic or category whenever we talk about games won and lost. Obviously, I always talk about turnover battles. I always talk about the explosive play battle, but then also too, one of the things that we don't talk about enough too is hidden yardage. So hidden yardage is the yards gained from a punt return, a kick return, yards gained from an interception, yards gained from a fumble, just like on this play right here. So you look at right here, they pretty much on the 20-yard line. You fumble the ball. Now for the offense, we automatically find ourselves on the 20-yard line. So now the playbook is a little different from having to drive the length of the field to already being put into red zone position. So that's one of those things that we call hidden yardage. And a lot of times, man, those hidden yardage are a very key component in games won and lost. So this was the very next play, man. Stephenville comes out in a shotgun. They send the running back in motion out the backfield. So I think what they were doing was just trying to identify exactly what Ruston was in terms of a zone, in terms of a man. A lot of times when you see teams utilizing motions, that's what they're trying to identify. And sometimes they can be for some type of setup play later on down the line. So it looks like Ruston was in man coverage. So they kind of run a double post concept where they run the slot and the outside guy. They have them tight to the formation for one. Tight meaning that their splits are much closer to the line of scrimmage opposed to lined up out wide. And they just run a double post concept from that. So it looks like what they were trying to do is just put the safety in conflict, because if they were in a version of man coverage, because if you're looking at the alignment of the corner, the corner is shading to the outside, which leads me to believe that he felt that he thought that he was going to have help inside. So if he thought that he was going to have help inside, then that leads me to believe that the safety was supposed to have been over the top of everything, kind of like the version of a cover one. But obviously, when you get down to the red zone, things become so much compact and so much tight that more times than not, you don't have to worry about the threat over the top ball. So I'm not quite sure what they were in terms of the defensive scheme, if it was a cover one or if it just was a version of just man all across the board. The reason why I don't think that it was like a cover zero, because it wasn't an all-out blitz. They only rushed 4 guys, and they wasn't really able to get any pressure. Stephenville offensive line held up, gave the quarterback a clean pocket. But when they ran that double post concept, it's like they kind of put the safety in conflict, because he had to try to stay over the top of it. And when he stayed over the top of the inside guy, he just came back behind him with the outside guy. And like I said, the corner was playing outside leverage to try to take away the out ball. So he just gave him the inside, and the quarterback just did a good job at delivering a dart right there for a touchdown. Right here, you have another guy to have a situation for Ruston. You got a 3rd and 3, and they send the slot guy in motion. And I think that was kind of just as a decoy to try to kind of have the defense be focused on him and assume that he probably was going to get the ball on some type of little jet sweep, but end up handing it off to the running back. So kudos to Stephenville for being disciplined with their eyes and not falling for the jet sweep. But then again, it also can be a tactic for Ruston, is a setup play kind of similar to the play I was talking about Stephenville in their touchdown when they sent the guy in motion, and that was trying to identify what the defense was in. But then I also said too that could have been a setup play for something later on down the game. So that could have been the same thing right here for Ruston. But they just don't get any penetration up front. I mean, the offensive line doesn't really get any push. Stephenville once again does a good job at just kind of collapsing the interior of the pocket. And just looking at it, that's kind of what their whole MO was to take away the strength of what Ruston does, and that's running the ball up the middle, and try to kind of make them be lateral runners opposed to being downhill runners. And one of the interesting things about it too is that you looking at it, it looks like they have once again that might even be a 6-man box. Let me take a look at it again. You got 4 down linemen, and then you got 6 linebackers. So it looks like that kind of for the most part was a 6-man box, but that just shows you the confidence that they have in their defensive line to be sitting back in a too high safety against a run heavy team like Ruston, and still be able to get pressure up front. And that's what made it so much harder on the back end to be able to throw the ball, because if you can commit just 4 guys up front to be able to stop the run or to be able to stop the pass, and then you can commit all the other guys back into pass coverage, you will be a very difficult team to be able to move the ball on. And that kind of was the whole gist of this game, with Ruston just not really being able to get a push up front, and not really ever making Stephenville respect the run. So they was able to just stay back in a too high safety, and just commit those guys to take away the over the top pass, for one, to take away the explosive plays, but then to commit more guys to the pass to be able to defend that as well. But like I said, right here on this play, they just do a good job at collapsing the interior, and they just left the running back with nowhere to go, and that led to a 4th down. So right here on this play, unlike their previous scoring possession, obviously you know that they end up getting a fumble recovery, so that just put them in red zone territory. So right here, this was a punt return that they end up getting, just not necessarily the best punt. It kind of gave them some hidden yardage and kind of put them in neutral field territory. But right here, as you can see, they run a simple RPO. You look at the offensive lineman, and one way to tell that a team is running RPOs is because you have a run pass option. So the quarterback has an option to either hand the ball off to the running back, or he has the option to keep the ball himself and run it, or he has the option to throw the ball. So one way to tell if a team is running RPOs, look at the offensive linemen. So if the offensive linemen are blocking forward as if it's a run play, then that's going to be an RPO, because obviously you still have the option of running the ball. So opposed to dropping back like they would do on a typical pass play, they will be blocking forward. Now, one of the downsides to RPOs is that it limits the route tree, because everything has to be quick throws, because if it's anything that's going downfield, whether that's a go go ball, a drag, a dig, a comeback, a curl. More times than not, you're going to get hit with an ineligible man downfield because the offensive line is going to be pushing forward as if it's a run play. So right here, you see Ruston is playing a soft coverage on the outside. And when you're dealing with an RPO team, because everything is going to be quick throws, you kind of would like to see them get up close and challenge them at the line of scrimmage. Opposed to kind of playing off like that, I probably would have rather just kind of sat in a too high to take away from the possibility of any explosive plays downfield while we kind of challenge them at the line of scrimmage, opposed to giving them free releases like they do right here. And they just gave them a free release on a slant. And this just was an easy pitch and catch. And this also was an explosive play. So the very next play, you got another explosive play. You seen the previous pass. That was an explosive pass. Now we got an explosive run. So Stephenville was kind of operating in tempo, trying to keep the Bearcats on their toes, being that they just hit them with an explosive play. So once again, you got another RPO. Like I said, you look at the offensive line. The offensive line is blocking forward, and you look at the slot receiver. He's running a slant, so that gives the quarterback an option, like I said, to either be able to keep the ball himself, hand the ball off, or throw it. So what he was looking at, if the safety doesn't follow this slot receiver right here, if the safety doesn't follow him, he just throws that ball right there in that window. But with the safety following him, nobody had outside containment, and it just was nothing but green grass on the outside for the running back. So once again, Stephenville makes it to the red zone. Right here, they're running another RPO concept. You see the outside. So the corner shows that he was going to, at first he showed as if he was going to play press. Now, had he played press, he possibly would have took away from that option of having a quick throw, because like I said, that's one of the downside to RPOs is the ball has to get out your hand quickly, because if not, you would get hit with an ineligible man downfield. But by him bailing before this ball was snapped, it ended up giving him the cushion. So once he ended up running the slant, he ended up getting back behind the safety, and then the corner was over the top of it. So, I mean, once again, man, that was just another easy pitch and catch. So right here on this play, you have a guy to have a situation. You look at Stephenville, they're on a 3rd and 13. So they end up getting 2 consecutive false start calls, which end up pushing them back to 2nd and long. And then they end up running the ball on 2nd and long and not really getting nothing. I think they might have got like a 2-yard gain, because I think it was a 2nd and 15. And that put them in a 3rd and long. And another guy to have a situation. So obviously, like I said, that's another one of the categories that we look at when we look at games won and lost, and even just drives, successful drives, and non-successful drives. So obviously, like I say, man, you got to have a situation with a 3rd and 13, and then you have a red zone possession. And like I always say, man, that red zone possessions, every down is a got to have it down, no matter if it's 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down, and 4th down. And right here, Ruston was able to come up with a stop. But if you look at who was influential on being able to get that stop, was number 90, Rakeem Potts. He ended up just being able to break through the offensive line. And if you look at him, we're going to take a look at that again. If you look at him when he got through, he was able to kind of get to the quarterback, which led to the quarterback having to kind of just get the ball out of his hands much quicker than where he may have wanted to. Once again, they were running it wasn't an RPO, but they ran a slant. Linebacker Keelan Davis just did a good job at just reading the quarterback's eyes, getting depth, sinking, and just being able to track the ball and coming up with an interception right here. So you have a guy to have a situation right here for Ruston. You got another 3rd and 3. So seeing that they're on 3rd and 3, and I think most of their 3rd downs have been on 3rd and 3s. It hasn't been any 3rd and long. So they actually have been winning 1st down and 2nd down. It's just they haven't been able to put it together to be able to extend the drive. But right here, they get their first down of the game. You see that they're lined up in a shotgun formation. And I like how they got it spread it out with the receivers. Being that they have it spread it out, they're taking guys out the box and just giving the running back a little bit more room to be able to work with. And that's exactly what they do right here. They're in the shotgun, and they just simply hand the ball off to him. And they get their first down of the game, and then they also get their first explosive play of the game as well. All right, so the very next play, they're operating in a tempo, obviously with the run, the Dalen Powell run. The very next play, they come out with the same set, spread it out again, and they just do a quick throw to the outside, just getting the ball to Josiah Morgan's hands in space. Obviously, you see that the defense is kind of playing soft coverage, playing off. So they just did a good job at being able to capitalize off of that, and that's something that I would like to see a little bit more, is them kind of getting him involved in the game, especially with Ahmad being out, just trying to figure out different ways to get him the ball, whether it's on screens, whether it's on jet sweeps, whether they move him around from the outside to the slot or even the backfield. Just try to figure out different ways to get the ball into his hand and allow for him to make plays just like this one right here. So right here, Ruston has their first red zone trip of the day. So right here, they just pretty much run the read option. Obviously, you see that he's reading the defensive end or the outside linebacker. They all kind of crash in to take Dalen Powell. So Hartwell just keeps it to the outside. But just look at the athleticism and just look at the ball pursuit from Stephenville right here, man. If this is any other team, man, that's probably a much bigger game than what it actually was. But they just did a good job at just being able to recover and to pursue the ball as a unit, to just not really give him any room to run besides just sideways, and he was able to kind of hit the edge on the outside and able to try to get upfield a little bit. But they just did a good job at being able to minimize the gain on that play. So on this play right here, Ruston's lined up to do a tush push or the brotherly shove, however you want to classify it. And they end up getting into the end zone, but they actually called it back for a legal procedure. So I'm not quite sure if it was somebody lined up in the wrong position or if they kind of hit the quarterback with a moving start before the ball was snapped. That's kind of what it looks like. But that eventually took the 7 points that they end up having, well, the 6 points that they end up having initially from scoring off the board. So a couple plays after they called illegal procedure on that touchdown, they end up moving the ball back. Ruston was able to end up getting the ball right back on the goal line again. Now, this is where you miss having Ahmad at, because obviously we know in this situation right here, had Ahmad been playing, it would have just been a jump ball to Ahmad, and more times than not, that would have resulted in a touchdown. But by them not having him, they went into the I formation and just tried to power the ball in on the 4th and 1. I thought that maybe they probably could have did a fullback dive and then pitch it maybe to Dalen Powell. I think they would have caught the defense off guard. But like I said, man, once again, man, Stephenville just has a phenomenal defense. The discipline, and even just the structure. Like I say, on one of the runs that we seen that Ruston ended up giving up, how I was talking about the outside containment. If you look at the Stephenville guy right there, they had him on the outside containment. So even if they would have pitched the ball, it would have ended up coming to a one-on-one situation with him and Dalen Powell, which I do like the odds of Dalen Powell in that one-on-one matchup situation had they pitched the ball. But Stephenville just did a good job at, once again, man, collapsing the interior and just leaving Ruston with nowhere to go on this fullback dive. Right here, you have a 2nd and 5. So if you notice that on a lot of these plays, like a lot of those RPO plays, those slants and things like that, you've seen that the defensive backs for Ruston were playing a very, very soft cushion, just like how they're doing right here. And a good sign of an offensive play caller to me is pretty much just taking what the defense gives you. And that's exactly what Stephenville does right here. You see that the corner is playing about, it's almost 10 yards off. And it's just a simple thing. They just run a little simple stop route, get the ball to him in space, and just try to allow for him to get some yards after the catch. The corner does a good job at being able to rally, coming downhill, closing the distance and making the tackle, but not before he got the first down. Right here, you have a guy to have a situation for Stephenville. They're behind the sticks on this play and they're backed up. So they're in bad territory right here. And Ruston sends a 6-man pressure at him, trying to make him have to make a quick decision to get the ball out of his hands, which he holds on to it for a tad bit too long. And Ruston's able to get in on him and able to come up with a sack on this 3rd down. So you got a guy to have a situation right here for Ruston. You got a 3rd and 6, and you see that the defense has 5 guys on the line, which more times than not is pretty much a tell that they're probably going to be blitzing, which they do. They send this guy off the edge. The running back, Dalen Powell, does a good job at being able to pick up the blitz to buy the quarterback some time. And he just kind of overshoots the receiver right here on this out route. And obviously, man, the defense did what they had to do, because as a defense, you want to try to make the quarterback have to throw the hardest pass possible. And obviously, throwing that out route, what was the harder pass to try to make, and obviously you see that he overshot him, which led to an incompletion on this 3rd down. So right here you have another guy to have a situation. You got a 4th and 4. You seen the previous play where they had the incompletion on the out route. So right here they end up going for it on 4th down. Obviously, that was 4th down territory. So they pretty much sent a blitz once again. This time, opposed to sending just an extra rusher, they actually sent a 2-man blitz. So they pretty much sent an all-out blitz, and everything else was just man coverage behind it. Ruston runs a wide receiver screen, and once again, like I said, man, Stephenville has a very aggressive and physical defense. Even if you look at number 3 right here, he takes on that block head on. It's kind of pushing the wide receiver back. So when he's pushing the wide receiver back, he actually pushed him back into number 13. But number 13 just did a good job at being able to stay on his feet, going through the contact and just being able to fall forward for a 1st down. So right here you have another guy to have a situation. You got a 3rd and forever. On the previous call, they end up calling a holding call on Ruston, so they end up putting him behind the sticks. And obviously, when you find yourself in the 3rd and 16, the chances of having a high succession rate on net is kind of slim to none. Especially with a good team defensively like Stephenville. So once again, like you say, man, Stephenville pretty much is playing with a too high safety shell to pretty much take away anything deep down the field. And obviously, playing down a distance, you pretty much know that anything that they throw for the most part is gonna have to be past the sticks. So that gives you some leeway with how you play that as well. And obviously, you see once again, man, they end up sending another blitz at Hartwell, and they kind of just was getting him off his spot. Now, right here, they showed because they showed 5 guys on the defensive line, but then they end up dropping 1 and just end up rushing 4. So the blitz pickup once again for Dalen Powell was pretty good. He was able to pick up the blitz to try to give his quarterback a little extra time to be able to throw the ball, which he did. But this was just phenomenal defense on the outside by the corner, just being able to utilize the sideline as his help defender and kind of just funnel the receiver over to the sideline, which led to an incompletion. All right, so on this play right here, you see that they were pinned up and in their own end zone on this punt, on the punt return, the previous punt return, and that just puts them in a bad position, field position, and man, you just hate to give it all up in one play. So right here, that's exactly what Ruston does. They run an RPO again. So you know, on a couple of plays earlier where they end up having outside runs, Stephenville I'm talking about, and I was talking about how they didn't have any outside containment. Nobody came and set the edge. It just was nothing but green grass. So right here, they prevent that from happening, which they allowed the safety to come down and set the edge, so that way it would have took away from an outside run had he decided to hand the ball off. Now, here's the kicker. Once the safety comes down to set the edge, now, guess what? Now you got a receiver that's running wide open on the out route. Obviously, you know, when you're playing against a team like Stephenville that runs RPO, like you said, it's a limited route tree. Everything has to be quick, whether it's a slant, hitch, or out route. So that ball is coming out their hands pretty quickly. So the safety's playing off coverage or soft shell once again. And like I said, man, a good play caller is going to take what the defense is giving them. If you're going to give me them quick throws, then we're going to take them all day. The safety kind of over pursues coming downhill and misses this, takes a bad angle on that. And the receiver was just able to get upfield and create an explosive play downfield. So right here, you got another guy to have a situation. Once again, Ruston did a good job at being able to win on 1st down and 2nd down and putting them in a 3rd and long. They're running man all across the board. So you see that they end up sending a 5-man pressure. They end up blitzing one of the linebackers. So the running back had to step up to try to help pick up the blitz that left the line that left number 4 with just being kind of utilized as a spy, because had the running back went out for a route, he would have been holding him. But by him not going out for a route and him having to stay back for pass protection, that just left number 4 free to roam around as either a spy, or he could have been a shallow crosser to try to take away from any shallow routes like a crossing route or a slant or anything like that. That's something that's going to be quick across the middle. So right here, quarterback does a good job at just kind of being able to extend the play, move around in the pocket. The linebacker did a good job at just mirroring his every move. Whenever he went left, whenever he went right, and just pursuing him and being able to minimize what he could have possibly end up turning into a 1st down run. So right here, you got another guy to have a situation. You got a 3rd and 12. So on the previous play, they end up making a 3-yard tackle in the backfield on Sam Hartwell. The defense just did a good job at being able to clog up the middle, leaving him nowhere to run besides left to right. And obviously, man, they just do a heck of a job at being able to pursue the football. The corner was able to come downhill and make a tackle on Sam Hartwell in the backfield for a 3-yard loss. So right here is similar to the same thing. They're running a read option, but they're not really giving him too much of nothing up the middle, forcing him to have to bounce it outside. And once again, man, they just operate as pack hunters. And every time that they identify that the ball is in the ball carrier's hands, man, you got 11 guys pursuing the ball aggressively. So this is another one of those situations where you just kind of wish that you were able to take advantage of. So you have a guy to have it at 3rd and 10. They end up getting a holding call. They end up pushing them back behind the sticks, but they end up having like a little small, I think it was a small run. They kind of pushed them up a little forward, but it left them in a 3rd and long. In the pass and pass coverage was actually good here initially. Obviously, you see they took away his first read, which made him have to kind of play off script a little bit. And obviously by them, it looked like they were in man coverage. So when you're playing man coverage, one of the downsides to playing man coverage, especially when you're dealing with mobile quarterbacks, is that your eyes is focused on the man that you're guarding more so than actually the quarterback. So whenever the quarterback takes off running more times than not, then he's going to be running for 5 or 10 yards before defensive backs can get their eyes to the backfield and see that he's took off running. But right here, they just kind of lose containment on the outside with him. You see the outside rusher kind of just run past him on both sides, and that just leaves him nothing but green grass. And like I said, when you're dealing with a quarterback that's mobile just like him, you just can't run past him. You have to be able to try to keep him contained to prevent plays like this from happening. So this play right here is a pretty interesting play right here. You have a 2nd and 8. So it looks like it might have been some type of miscommunication in terms of what pass coverage that we were in. And what I mean by that is because you look at number 1. So you look at, they tried to run a pick route. Look, they tried to run a pick or a rub route. They sent the outside receiver in for a slant, and they kind of trailed the slot receiver and kind of ran like a little wheel route up the field. But if you look at it, number 1 actually was in position. Had he just stayed at the rate had he stayed on the pathway that he was, he would have been in phase to be able to try to defend that ball. But it looks as if he thought that maybe it was some type of zone coverage, kind of considering how he turned, because you look at it right here, if he stays on top of that, he's in phase to be able to make a play on the ball. He turns his head back to the quarterback and squares up his body. So now it's almost as if he was dropping into a zone. So once he does that, now the receiver's just streaking up the side, down and up the field for an easy catch and run. Number 8, Jaden Annan, does a good job at being able to, realize exactly what was going on and being able to, get to it to try to minimize it. But at the end of the day, the damage was already done. Like I say, man, you hate to give it all up in one play. You would much rather force a team to have to kind of drive the length of the field and maybe go 3 plays, 4 plays, 5 plays before they find themselves in this type of field positioning. But you just hate to give it all up in one play. So right here on this play, man, you got a 1st and 10. So I would say too, man, this was just a very, very beautiful play call from Stephenville right here. So you see that they have 3 wide receivers lined up on the left side of the formation. So they fake as if they're going to run a wide receiver screen. So when they dump off the closest receiver to the line of scrimmage, he kind of bubbles out as if as if they're going to run some type of little wide receiver bubble screen. So notice that when he kind of bubbles out, notice number 13. Number 13 goes to show as if he's going to block the safety number 1. So once he goes to show that he's going to block, they pretty much declare him as a non-receiver, as if the ball isn't going to come to him. So once he shows a delayed response to go out to block and they drive downhill, he just stems up the field, up the sideline, and is wide open, man. So like I say, man, that was just a beautiful play call by Stephenville. And that's the whole point of what they do in terms of the RPO, because you know that with the RPO, it's going to be a quick pass. So when you see the wide receiver kind of fading out as if he's going to run a bubble screen, and then number 13 coming up as if he's going to try to block you, to try to defend it, to try to create a pathway for his receiver to be able to get upfield, then obviously as a defense, your whole objective is to try to get around him and get to the guy that you perceive that's going to be getting the ball. And they kind of just use Ruston's aggressiveness against him on this play right here. So, man, that was just a phenomenal play call on Stephenville. And not only just a phenomenal play call, but just phenomenal execution as a whole. So what I'm going to do is, man, I'm going to break it up into a two-half video. So this video is just going to be the first half. And then I'm going to do a part 2, and that's going to be the second half. But, man, if you guys did enjoy this video, do me a big favor, man. Smash that thumbs up button. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. When you subscribe, make sure that you got that notification bell turned on. That way you be notified every time I upload. And I'll see y'all in the next video.